turned out to be a pretty nice day out after everything's all said and done in the rain this morning. So let's go do a little bit of crop scouting, guys. Okay, so we need to get the Red Ranger out of the shed again. So we'll walk over. There it is right there. Get the door opened up here. And up she goes. And if it starts, we'll be in business. Let's find out. We are good to go. Okay, so we're out here in our first little spot that we were going to check. It's right along the fence line. And as expected, you're going to see some more weeds out here. This is actually all volunteer corn. But there's some grass that's growing out here too. And then a couple pieces of water hemp too that I noticed that survived our initial pass with the sprayer. Got a couple plants right there. They're still pretty small. They should be easy to take care of with our second application here. We got lucky last year with our first application of post-emerge. And yeah, it's just going to be how it goes this year, I guess. Again, you're going to see a lot more pressure from weeds that are growing right along the fence lines. So it's going to be pretty clear that we have some stuff going on here. But if you look at the rest of the field, and I'll include a flyover later, the stuff that's in the interior part down in here, that actually looks pretty darn good. Again, it's just going to be right along the fence lines, waterways, borders, stuff like that. So we'll just have to kind of keep looking. But if you look, the beans are getting pretty big. They look good. They've got good color. If you look at the leaves themselves, they don't have a lot of discoloration on them. I don't see a lot of big bite marks from insects or bugs that would be biting them. So I think we're going to be in pretty good shape as far as that's concerned. As I'm recording this, it is Sunday, June 29th, excuse me, at about 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. And this morning we ended up with another 0.6 of an inch of rain. There's plenty of moisture out here. You can see in the soil there. It's not very dusty out here tonight. But that would put us at just over 3 inches of rain over the last 4 days, I believe is what I figured out this morning. So yeah, we're sitting pretty good on moisture here right now. We could take a break from rain. There's another couple chances in the forecast the next couple days. And then again on Friday, July 4th. And I guess we'll take what we can get. It's going to take plenty of rain for our subsoil to come back to levels that we would like them to for moisture content, especially given the fact that the last 2 or 3 years have been awful dry. Basically since 2020, we've been sitting at a rainfall deficit when you compare that with our average rainfall totals. But that's how it goes. So again, weed pressure through here, it's looking like volunteer corn, some grass, especially right along the fence line. Once you get in the field a little bit, it turns into a lot more broadleaf issue, especially with like that water hemp plant right there. So notoriously hard to take care of that stuff. Hopefully our next pass is going to be a little bit hotter than the first one we did, and that'll take care of some of that. Let's go down and we'll look at our cornfield over there, and then we'll just follow the waterway all the way back around, and we'll end the tour down there on the soybean field on the southwest side. Okay, so we just went straight west of where we started at here. And this is right where we go between our corn or soybean field and our corn field. We'll focus our attention on corn here in a little bit, but we'll come back to looking at soybeans here. Again, we're seeing a little bit of grass encroachment along the water or the pasture right there, that path. And then a little bit of volunteer corn in the end rows over here too that I'm seeing. You can see some just over there. But by and large, it looks pretty darn decent. Let's walk out here into the middle of the main part of the field, and we'll see what it looks like out there. Okay, we walked out here about maybe 50 yards or so into the main part of our soybean field. And if you're looking down the rows here, it looks a lot cleaner, which again is to be expected, minus a couple spots here where maybe the grain cart got a little full or something like that last year when we were harvesting. I see a little bit of volunteer corn there as well. But as far as grass and water hemp pressure, out here through the middle of the field, it actually looks pretty darn decent. We'll check again in a couple spots in the south part of the field. Yeah, like I said, I'll include that video of the flyover later, and you guys can see what the majority of the field looks like from that. But yeah, not too bad. I did see from our crop scouting recommendations that of all of the fields that we operate between Dad and I, this one is the lowest level on our priority list to get sprayed, which makes me feel somewhat decent and confident about it, I suppose. He has a lot more issues with water hemp in some of his fields than we do on this one, so that is a good thing. I will take that as a win any day of the week. Okay, while we're here along the north edge, let's go and check some of our cornfields out. The corn is canopied at this point, which means that there's not going to be any sunlight that's getting back down in between the rows, and that helps us immensely because at that point, basically any weeds are going to be smothered out as far as sunlight's concerned, and they're not going to be able to produce viable seed at the tail end of the year, and they're not going to be able to take enough nutrients and enough water out of the corn crop to really negatively impact our yield. So, but we'll still go through and look at it. I know we got a little bit of wind last night, so we'll see what that did to our corn plants and see if we think they'll come back from them. So I'm walking through our cornfield here. These plants are about waist high on me. The old adage was waist or knee high by the 4th of July. We're just about 5 days in front of that as far as time frame is concerned, and our corn is a lot taller than that old adage would have you believe. A lot of that's been chalked up to modern genetics and better practices, and maybe a little bit earlier planting window as well. But I'll tell you what, I am looking through the stuff that I'm walking by here, and we got some wind last night, and I knew it was fairly stout, but it really tore some leaves up pretty bad out here, so I will have to do some evaluating on that. I guess the main thing out here for the purpose of this video for right now is just again to show you that you can't really see any of the ground in between the rows currently, and that's a good thing because like I said, that's going to be choking out all the weed pressure that may have been coming up through the undergrowth here. The only thing that I would be concerned about looking at this corn at this point would be maybe some sort of a fungicide application, because there's a lot of open tissue here for different pathogens to get into the plant tissue, and that could potentially cause an issue with some sort of a disease that would rob some yield from us later this summer. I do know that the yield has been set already. The peak has already been established. That's usually done by about the 5th vegetative stage when corn's about 8 inches tall. So we're well beyond that. This isn't helping us anything at all, obviously, but I think it's still early enough in the growing season that a lot of this is going to be old growth by the time we get to the reproductive stages of the cropping year. So I don't necessarily think that this is going to impact us too much, as long as we can keep these plants healthy between now and that time of year. So I guess that's kind of what I'm more concerned about at this point. So, okay, let's go check to see what it looks like on the south end of this field, and then we'll go check on the south corners, or southern edges, excuse me, of the soybean field, and we will probably call it a night. Okay, I've been driving through the hay meadow here the last little bit, and you can see the grass is really, really tall. It looks really good and really healthy, good color and everything. Also, there's a lot of wildlife out here. Not only all the insects that I've got on the hood of the Ranger now, but if you just take a second, you can listen to all the songs of the birds that are out here. Pheasants, blackbirds, all kinds of cool stuff out here. So it's a beautiful part of the world right through here. No complaints. The complaint I do have, though, is this corn. I was really hoping that by the time I got down here to the southern end of the field, that the leaves wouldn't look quite as tattered, but they do. So what I'm thinking, I know last night, some, not necessarily neighbors, I guess, but neighbors to the north, about 60 miles, ended up with some really nasty wind and tornadoes. And I've got a couple buddies that live up in that part of the world, and one of them had a funnel cloud heading right for their place. And even though that storm was drifting off to the east from Clear Lake, South Dakota-ish area, I know that we still had some downdrafts this far south from that storm. Right around about 11:30 or so, we got some pretty nasty wind down here, but I did not think it was this bad. So when I get home, I'll talk to Dad and see what he has to say about his fields, and then what our agronomist has to say, the guy that helps us out and kind of helps us plan as far as what we want to be spraying and what we want to be planting. Kind of gives us a general outline, and then we kind of fine tune all the details, but see what he thinks about this too, because this is kind of depressing. And the reason I'm thinking it's wind and not hail is because we looked at some soybean fields already, and we're going to go look at another soybean field now, or at least the southern end of our field, but the soybeans don't look like they got it nearly as bad. So I'm thinking that this corn being a little bit taller took the brunt of that wind that came through here last night, or at least that's what my best guess is. Again, soybeans, they look a lot better. If it had been hail, the soybean leaves would have been all tore apart and looked like this as well. But that looks like wind damage to me, not nearly as much as it looks like hail damage. So, but like I said, we'll see how the corn springs back from this. I'm just by no means ready to call this a disaster at this point. If we'd have had ears that were already starting to have kernels growing on them, and we'd have gotten something like this, now you're looking at a lack of photosynthesis that can occur to help with kernel fill. But again, the leaves that are on these plants right now are going to be underneath a lot of the new growth that we see in the upcoming couple of months here. Something else I'll do when I get home, and I'll link it in this video, is I will just put a display up as far as how we are doing as far as GDU accumulation is concerned. I believe with the heat we've had in the last couple of weeks, we're probably about to our average for this time of year, which is great. That helps. We did get our crops planted earlier than normal this year, so if everything else goes right the rest of the year, we'll have at least some more sunlight and more warm days to accumulate some additional yield onto. So specifically in corn. Soybeans aren't as dependent on temperature, but corn certainly is. But while we're here, let's go take a look at our soybean field over here, and we'll see what we see. We're back out here in our soybean field. Cornfield's probably 25-30 yards that way. And again, I'm looking at these leaves and they don't look like they had any hail come on them. So I'm positive that was wind damage that we accumulated last night. Again, down here in the southern part of the soybean field, the rows look pretty clean out here in the main part. The problem areas we have with weed pressure is again going to be right along the edge of the waterway right through here. And then along fence lines to the south with our neighbors there, and to the east with our neighbors over there. So again, very, very common. That's what you expect to see. There's already grass growing there, and it's really easy for that stuff to just kind of spread in from the edges and work their way into the interior part of the field. So, but yeah, soybeans look pretty darn good. I'm happy with the way that these are looking at this point in time. So, okay, I think I've seen enough for tonight. We'll go back to the farm and we'll cover up a few more things, and then we'll call it a day. We just got back from our crop scouting mission here, and I'll be honest with you, I got a lot more mud on my muck boots than I thought I was going to, especially considering how dry it's been. But like I just told you guys too, 3 inches of rain in 4 days. I just assumed that it would have soaked in a little bit more, and it ended up being a very, very sticky, muggy day down here too. So I just assumed that a lot of that would have evaporated by now, but that's okay. Again, as far as the fields look, I'm pretty happy, pretty content with them. I think there's some questions to be asked as far as the corn crop's concerned. Soybeans at this point look great. No complaints there whatsoever. We'll get them taken care of with our post-emerge application here later this week or early next week. And at that point, I think we should be kind of ready to go for beans as well. At that point, I believe it's just going to be waiting for timely rains and hoping that it's just rain and nothing more severe than that. The corn crop, like I said, unless we need a foliar fungicide to take care of those leaves, I think that there's not much to do as far as that's concerned either. But we will keep you guys posted on that as time goes forward. So, okay, that's all I got for today. We'll talk to you later.